She was trembling inside a torn cardboard box on a hot Dallas sidewalk, so small I almost didn't see her. The noise of traffic rushed by. People stepped around her without a glance. And yet this German Shepherd puppy sat there like a forgotten piece of trash. Her ribs showed beneath patchy fur, her eyes wide with fear but still searching, still clinging to something. I bent down and saw the tiny tag someone had scribbled. Nothing but the word Runt. They didn't even give her a name. That's when I decided she would be Nenah. Na's whole body shook when I lifted her. She weighed almost nothing, a little pup with no strength to resist. I felt her heartbeat flutter against my palm like a trapped bird. And I thought, this rescued puppy might not last the afternoon. I'm Mark. I'm 52. And I've seen weak animals before, but never one that looked at me with such silent desperation. Her eyes begged not for food, not even for comfort, just for a chance. I stood there on that sidewalk with a German Shepherd puppy in my arms, wondering how many people had walked by without stopping. She smelled faintly of dust and fear, and I realized that if I put her down, she wouldn't survive another hour. Stray pups like her don't get second chances on their own. I walked to my truck with Nenah pressed close, shielding her from the sun. She whimpered just once, a sound so small it barely reached my ears, but it went straight through me. The cars honked, the city moved on, and still I held her, knowing my life had just taken a turn. As I opened the door and laid her on the seat beside me, Na's head tilted slightly. For a moment her gaze locked onto mine, fragile, but unbroken. That was the instant I knew she was a fighter, even if she didn't believe it yet. And as the truck pulled away from that sidewalk, I had no idea how this abandoned puppy would change everything I thought I knew about courage. Nenah curled up on the passenger seat like a shadow trying to disappear. Her little body shook each time the engine rumbled, and I could see how thin she was, bones sharper than they should ever be on a pup. She pressed her nose against the torn fabric of the seat, hiding her face. But every so often she peeked up at me as if to check if I was real. I whispered softly, telling her she was safe now, though I wasn't sure she believed me yet. I remembered being a kid, watching my father scoop up a stray pup from behind a gas station. That dog had clung to him the way this abandoned puppy clung to my presence now, trembling, but unwilling to let go of hope. Memories like that stay with you. They remind you what compassion looks like when it's most needed. The drive to the shelter was short, but every minute felt heavy. Na barely moved. I reached over once, and her tiny paw pressed against my hand like she was asking me not to let go. I thought about how many small dogs like her never find a hand to reach for. That thought nearly broke me. When I carried her into the shelter, a volunteer met my eyes, then glanced down at the frail little companion in my arms. The woman sighed the way people do when they've seen too many hopeless cases. "The Runt," she murmured, and the words cut deep. I didn't want Na to be defined by that single cruel label. She was a living, breathing, loyal puppy who just hadn't been given a chance. They took her gently, placing her on a scale, whispering notes to each other about her weight, her condition, her fear. I stood nearby, fists clenched, feeling protective in a way I hadn't expected. She looked so small on that cold table, yet her eyes never stopped following me. Even in that strange place with strangers touching her, she chose to keep me in sight. As I leaned closer, Na gave the tiniest whimper, a sound that seemed to say, "Don't leave me." And in that moment I realized this wasn't just a rescued puppy in need. It was the beginning of something I wasn't ready to admit out loud. Because the truth was, I already couldn't imagine walking out of that shelter without her. The vet came out with that careful look professionals wear when they don't want to crush hope. He spoke gently, but the words still landed like stones. Malnourished, undersized, failure to thrive. I hated the way they said it. Like my little pup was just a chart waiting to be closed. Na lay on the exam table, her ears twitching at every sound, her body still trembling. She wasn't a statistic. She was a life trying to push forward, fragile but determined. I leaned down, and her tiny eyes locked on mine. That abandoned puppy didn't look away. She seemed to be asking, "Do you see me? Do you believe in me?" I whispered her name, and the faintest wag of her tail answered. It was small, almost invisible. But it was there, a signal that she hadn't given up. The shelter worker suggested I leave her there, let them handle her care. I nodded politely, but inside my chest, something snapped. I couldn't just walk out. I'd carried that stray pup off the sidewalk, and now she looked at me as if I were her only anchor. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I wasn't going to let her drift away alone. That night, I stayed longer than I should have, sitting on a bench in the shelter's quiet corner, while Nenah rested in a small crate nearby. Every time I shifted, her head rose, following me. Her gaze pinned me down like an invisible leash. A loyal puppy doesn't need words to claim you, just a look that says, "Stay." I finally reached through the bars and her paw, thin and delicate, rested against my fingers. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since I found her, her breathing slowed. She was no longer fighting the world in that moment. She was simply trusting me. When I finally stood to leave, my chest felt heavy. I promised myself it was just for tonight, that I'd come back tomorrow to check on her. But as I walked out, I knew deep down this wasn't temporary. This rescued puppy had already tied herself to me, and I wasn't sure I wanted to break free. The next morning, I was back at the shelter before the doors even unlocked. I told myself it was just to check on her, to make sure that little pup had made it through the night. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. When the staff finally let me in, I walked straight past the cages until I saw her. Nenah curled in the corner of her crate, ears twitching at the sound of my boots. The moment she recognized me, she struggled to her feet, her tail giving the weakest little wag. That single gesture nearly undid me. The worker smiled faintly. "She perked up the second she heard your voice," she said. I knelt in front of the crate, and Nenah pressed her nose through the bars, nudging my hand. She was no longer just an abandoned puppy. They all could see she had already chosen her person. A rescued pup doesn't survive on food alone. Sometimes what saves them is the bond that begins before you even realize it's happening. They told me she needed careful monitoring, special meals, and medicine to help her fragile body gain strength. I listened, nodding, but my eyes never left Nenah. She was so small compared to the other dogs barking around her, yet she didn't flinch when they howled. That fearless spark flickered again, a reminder that this little companion wasn't going to stay weak forever. I asked if I could sit with her while she ate. They brought a shallow bowl, set it inside the crate, and stepped back. Nenah sniffed the food but wouldn't move until I placed my hand just inside, whispering softly. Slowly, cautiously, she took a bite. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me believe she wanted to fight. Watching her eat from my hand felt like the first victory in a long battle neither of us had planned for. By the time I left that day, the decision was already written on my face. This stray pup wasn't just another case for the shelter. She was mine in a way I couldn't explain. And though she was still frail, still uncertain, I knew the next step would change both of our lives forever. That evening, I sat cross-legged on the shelter floor with Nenah resting in my lap, her fragile body pressed tight against me as if she feared I'd vanish. For the first time, she accepted food from my palm without hesitation, licking the last crumbs from my skin. That small dog, once too weak to lift her head, was beginning to trust. Every bite felt like a promise that tomorrow could be different. The staff watched, surprised at how the little pup clung to me. One of them whispered, "She only eats when you're around." I didn't answer because deep inside I already knew why. An abandoned puppy doesn't just look for food. It looks for an anchor. Somehow, in the middle of all this noise and fear, I'd become hers. As the hours passed, she shifted closer, her breathing steadying until it matched the rhythm of my chest. I felt her tiny paw slide against my arm, a brave gesture from a once timid pup who had been discarded like she didn't matter. That touch was her way of saying, "I'm still here." I realized then that this rescued puppy wasn't surviving because of medicine alone. She was surviving because she had chosen to fight alongside me. When it was time to leave, the volunteer suggested she stay at the shelter overnight again. I hesitated at the door, looking back at the crate where they placed her. Her wide eyes followed me, silent but pleading, and I couldn't shake the image. That loyal puppy didn't just need care. She needed consistency. Someone who wouldn't vanish like all the others. I walked out into the cool night air with my keys in hand. But every step felt wrong, like I was leaving behind more than just a dog. And as I started my truck, the thought hit me hard. Tomorrow I wasn't just coming back to visit. I was going to bring her home. The next morning I filled out the paperwork with a pen that shook more than I expected. The shelter worker smiled knowingly as I signed the last line and clipped the leash onto Nenah's collar. She was officially coming home with me. That rescued puppy didn't pull away. She pressed into my leg like she already knew this was where she belonged. The drive back felt different this time. She wasn't curled into herself anymore. Instead, she rested her head on the seat beside me, eyes half closed, trusting that she was safe. When we stepped into my house, she froze. Every creak of the floorboard, every tick of the clock seemed to rattle her nerves. I crouched down, letting her sniff the air, letting her decide the pace. That little pup moved cautiously, her paws barely making a sound, until she reached the corner where sunlight spilled through the blinds. She sank down into that patch of warmth as if she'd finally found her own place in the world. I set out a small bowl of food, and for the first time, she ate without hesitation. Bite by bite, her tail began to flicker with shy confidence. I watched her transform from a frightened stray pup into a playful puppy, testing the space, exploring inch by inch. The sound of her paws skittering across the kitchen floor felt like music I didn't know I'd been missing. Later, when I sat on the couch, she climbed up slowly, almost timidly, before curling against my side. Her breathing deepened, and soon she was asleep, her tiny body rising and falling against me. That orphan puppy had been abandoned in a box, left without a chance. And now here she was dreaming in the safety of my arms. I told myself I was just fostering her, that this was temporary until she grew stronger. But as I looked down at that loyal puppy sleeping so peacefully, I knew I was lying to myself. Because in her quiet, fragile way, she was already teaching me what it meant to belong. And I wasn't ready to let her go. The first nights at home were harder than I admitted to anyone. Every creak of the house sent Nenah scrambling under the table, her small body pressed so tightly against the floor that she seemed to vanish. She would shake until I slid down beside her, whispering softly until those frightened eyes softened. That little pup had survived abandonment, but safety was still a foreign language she didn't quite trust. I tried everything, leaving a lamp on, setting a blanket near my bed, even putting one of my old shirts in her corner so she could smell me when I wasn't right there. Each time she crawled onto it, curling herself into a trembling ball, I understood how much fear still lived inside her. A rescued puppy doesn't shed that weight overnight. It takes patience and sometimes just sitting in silence, proving you won't leave. During the day, she followed me room to room, her paws clicking lightly across the floor, never letting me drift too far. That loyal puppy had gone from invisible on a busy street to becoming my constant shadow. And though her tail only wagged in the smallest flickers, I celebrated every single one. A brave pup isn't measured by size or strength. It's measured by the courage to trust again. One evening I dropped my keys, the sharp clang startling her into a dash behind the couch. My heart ached watching her tremble, but I didn't rush to pull her out. Instead, I sat on the floor, speaking softly, waiting. After a long minute, her nose peeked around the corner, then her head, and finally her whole furry pup body crept back toward me. When she laid her chin across my knee, I knew she was telling me in her own way, "I'm trying." I stroked her back slowly, feeling the thin bones beneath her growing frame. She wasn't healed yet, not even close, but every step forward mattered. And that night, for the very first time, Na climbed onto my bed uninvited, curling at my feet like she had finally decided this was home. The first walk around the neighborhood was nothing like I imagined. Na froze the moment we stepped onto the sidewalk, her paws stiff, her ears darting in every direction at the sounds of barking and car doors slamming. That little pup planted herself beside my leg, her eyes scanning for escape, and I realized just how much the world still terrified her. An abandoned puppy doesn't forget the noise of being unwanted. It lingers like an echo. I knelt down, rubbing her chest gently, whispering encouragement until her breathing steadied. Step by step, we made our way down the block. Neighbors stopped to stare, some smiling, some shaking their heads. One man laughed under his breath. "That tiny stray pup won't ever toughen up." His words stung, but I didn't argue. I just looked at Na, trembling, but still moving forward, and thought, "You'll show them." Every sound made her flinch at first. A slamming screen door, a child's shout, the growl of a passing dog behind a fence. But each time she pressed closer against my leg, she chose to keep walking instead of running back. That rescued puppy was learning in real time that fear didn't have to win. By the time we circled back to the house, her tail flickered once, the smallest sign of pride. Inside, I tossed her a soft rope toy. At first, she sniffed it with suspicion, unsure what to do. Then, with a sudden spark, she grabbed it and shook her head, stumbling over her own paws as she played. That playful puppy looked nothing like the shaking shadow I had carried in days before. She rolled onto her back, paws in the air, demanding another round of tug, and I couldn't help but laugh for the first time in a long while. I watched her fall asleep afterward, curled up on the rug with the rope beside her. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was starting to live. And though her journey was only beginning, I could already feel the strength building inside that brave pup, waiting for the moment it would shine. With each passing week, Nenah began to shed the shadows of her past. Her steps grew steadier, her tail carried higher, her eyes brighter. I watched this once abandoned puppy transform into a growing puppy with fire in her spirit, testing her limits one small victory at a time. She no longer trembled at every slam of a door. Now she stood, ears perked, ready to face whatever startled her. That little companion was showing me the strength I hadn't expected to see so soon. Our walks became longer. Instead of hugging my leg, she started to lead me down the sidewalk, sniffing curiously, exploring corners she once avoided. One afternoon, a bigger dog barked from behind a gate, and I braced myself for her to panic. But she didn't. That loyal puppy planted her paws, stood tall, and barked back. Not in fear, but for a second I couldn't breathe. That stray pup I found in a box was learning she had a voice. Inside the house, she turned playful in ways that made me laugh. She'd grab her rope toy, trot proudly across the room and throw it in the air before pouncing on it again. Sometimes she'd skid across the floor, chasing after a ball, her paws sliding, her ears bouncing, as if joy was a brand new discovery she never wanted to let go of. That furry pup had gone from a shadow to a spark, and every spark lit something inside me too. Still, her eyes carried hints of the battles she'd fought. On quiet nights, she'd rest her chin on my knee, staring with a depth that reminded me she was both fragile and fierce. I stroked her back slowly, whispering her name, and each time she leaned into my hand, I knew she was choosing trust all over again. A rescued puppy doesn't just heal once, it heals in layers, each one deeper than the last. And though she was still small compared to others, there was no denying it anymore. My brave pup was building courage, and I felt in my bones she was getting ready to prove it in ways neither of us could yet imagine. It happened on a quiet Saturday afternoon, the kind of day when the streets are filled with kids on bikes and neighbors trimming hedges. Nenah trotted beside me, her tail swaying with a confidence I hadn't seen before. She was no longer that abandoned puppy trembling in a box. She was a growing puppy, testing her strength with every step. I didn't know then that in just a few minutes she would prove how far she had come. Two kids were playing catch down the block when a large dog slipped free from its leash. The sound of its paws pounding against the pavement made my chest tighten. The children froze, their ball rolling away as the animal charged toward them. I felt the surge of panic, ready to run. But before I could move, Nenah darted forward. That little pup, once too weak to stand, placed herself directly between the kids and the oncoming blur of fur and teeth. Her bark cracked through the air, sharp and fearless. That loyal puppy lowered her stance, ears pinned back, her whole body declaring she wasn't going to let anything touch those children. The bigger dog slowed, startled by her sudden defiance. It circled, growling, but Nenah didn't retreat. She stood her ground, chest out, a brave pup showing the courage she had been building all along. Neighbors rushed in, grabbing the larger canine, pulling it back to its owner. The kids clung to each other, eyes wide but safe. And in the middle of the chaos stood Nenah, still barking, her small frame vibrating with the power of her voice. My throat tightened, my eyes burning as I watched her. This once orphaned puppy, this little companion nobody wanted, now protecting strangers with everything inside her. When the street finally quieted, Nenah turned back to me, her tail wagging like nothing extraordinary had happened. But I knew it had. That rescued puppy, once labeled the Runt, had just shown the entire block who she truly was, and I could feel it. This was only the beginning of how far her courage would carry her. Word spread fast after that day. Neighbors who once shook their heads now stopped me on walks just to bend down and scratch Na behind the ears. They called her the little guardian, the brave pup who had stepped in when it mattered most. Kids waved from their porches, shouting her name like she was some kind of hero, and she wagged her tail proudly, soaking up every bit of the attention. That loyal puppy who once couldn't lift her head in a shelter crate now carried herself like she belonged everywhere she went. I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my mind. How that stray pup, once left in a cardboard box, had chosen courage over fear. I knew in my bones she hadn't done it out of instinct alone. She did it because something inside her refused to stay small. That orphaned puppy had decided she was more than a runt. She was becoming the bravest soul on our block, maybe braver than most people I knew. At home she carried herself differently. She'd trot into a room and flop down at my feet, her head high as if she was claiming her place in the world. When she played harder, tugging on ropes, chasing balls, bounding across the grass with her ears flying. That playful puppy had discovered joy, and I got to witness it bloom day by day. One evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip low over Dallas, and Na rested her chin on my knee. I rubbed her back, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing, and thought about how close I came to walking past that torn box on the sidewalk. I almost missed her. The idea shook me more than I liked to admit, because the truth was clear now. This wasn't just a rescued puppy I had saved. This was my four-legged friend, my little companion, who had taught me more about resilience than I thought possible. And as I looked into her steady eyes, I knew our story wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about belonging. She was the Runt, the one left trembling in a box, nearly invisible to the world. I remember that first moment, her tiny body pressed against my hands, so fragile I wondered if she'd survived the ride home. And now when I look at Nenah stretched proudly across the porch, eyes bright, chest lifted, I don't see weakness. I see a brave pup who proved that courage can grow from the smallest spark. Na's journey is proof that the ones overlooked, the ones abandoned, are often the ones who rise with the greatest strength. That orphaned puppy who once shook at every sound now stands tall. A loyal puppy who guards children, who plays with joy, who carries herself like she was meant to be here all along. She taught me that healing isn't just survival, it's transformation. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. They are the reason Nenah got her second chance, and the reason other stray pups will find theirs. And caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. It's the commitment to stay when others walk away. If Na's story touched your heart, remember there are countless little companions still waiting in silence, hoping for someone to notice them. Sharing her story isn't just about one dog. It's about giving every abandoned puppy a voice, a chance, a future. Nenah was the Runt no one wanted. Now she is the bravest dog on the block.